All right, we're recording. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Special weather briefing for April 2nd, 2024. We'll just dive right into it. The severe weather outlook has been a progression throughout the day today. We had an enhanced risk in the far northwest part of the state issued yesterday. As of today, that was expanded this morning to include much of western and now even southwestern parts of Georgia. The most recent update, which you have on your screen here, was issued about an hour and a half ago, and it basically expanded a little further east on the southeast side of that enhanced risk. Some of the facets we're looking at from the severe weather modes, it's basically all encompassing. It's large hail, it's damaging winds, it's tornadoes, and the flooding threat will be a little more isolated to the northwest corner where we're expecting maybe a little bit more rainfall. But overall, the flooding threat is not the primary part of concern. We are looking at storms potentially beginning as early as 6 p.m., but really the risk increases in an unusual situation, increases with time, with the dangerous parts of the storm coming in and really starting after 9 p.m. tonight. And I'll dive deeper into this. So one thing I want to point out, and I'll point it out at the very end, this is looking like a nighttime severe weather event. And so we have some things we'll push out for you on the preparedness side at the end of this webinar. So the latest radar loop, we are starting to see a little bit of activity firing up in Mississippi, up into Tennessee. The two areas that we'll need to watch are northwestern Georgia and then along the I-20 corridor in areas south. It seems like two separate things are going to come together. We are expecting a line moving in from the northwest with that stuff that we're seeing develop back to our northwest. But then we're also likely, and this is some of the model stuff I'll get into a little bit later, new storm development in east central Alabama later this evening and moving in from the southwest. The other box you see on your screen here is the latest tornado watch that's up in Tennessee that's associated with that line that is starting to take shape up there. Obviously, they're looking at a high probability of tornadoes and strong winds with that. There is a hail threat as well, but it's mainly tornado and strong winds. So diving into the why this is happening, first on the left-hand side, you can see on the satellite, we do have pretty good overcast clouds, but it's allowing us to. Other thing to know, you can see the clouds streaming north. That's pivotal because that's a surge in moisture that will be coming north and impacting us later in. And why is that happening? A loop of the upper level jet. The thing that's starting to take shape, the blizzard that you'll be hearing about in the coming days over the northeast, is this upper low that's over and interacting with this southern stream jet that's coming up from Texas and Louisiana into the Gulf. One thing you'll notice is that we start off with like reds. That's an enhancement to the jet over us, resulting in significant increased wind speed. As a result of that increase in wind speed, with that increasing jet. And so it's not typical for us to see this happen during the nighttime hours, but what's actually happening is all of this is occurring over a result, and that's the atmospheric response to that increasing jet. So that's the why it's happening, and it's unusual for things to form that way, but that's what's taking shape. Here's a broad overview of the risk, which I showed you on the first slide. Obviously, we're looking at all the facets of severe modes, basically this evening through Wednesday morning. I'll go one by one through the risks, and then we'll dive into the timing. So Northwest Georgia has the highest risk of severe winds this evening. They did expand the damaging wind threat further south and east along with that enhanced. It was not there earlier, but now it is. And that is because of the increasing winds that I just showed on that last slide. The low-level winds are going to be increasing with time. We're looking at a low-level jet of anywhere from 60 to as high as 80 miles an hour by the time this thing peaks after midnight tonight. And so the ability for the atmosphere and for the storms to tap into some of those winds and bring them to the surface will be there. And so the damaging wind threat will be obviously across everywhere in the area in red. That is a 30 to 45% probability. So it's a much higher probability along and ahead of that line for winds. One of the other big concerns for us is the tornado risk. And it's not often we get a hatched area, but We do have a pretty wide encompassing hatched area, and the hatch corresponds to, if you look on the legend in the bottom right, a greater than 10% probability of a significant tornado, and that's an EF2 or greater. And so that's everywhere in the hatched area will have that possibility, given the parameters that are starting to take shape and come together for tonight. To put that in context, the graphic on the bottom is the climatology for tornadoes for today, for April 2nd. It shows a normal 4% chance. The fact that we have a 10% chance of tornadoes, or the probability of a tornadoes, corresponds to about a 25 or greater chance than normal, above normal chance of a tornado. So it's 25 times greater than normal. And so the other thing with this, obviously the tornado risk will increase after 7 p.m. and more so after 9 p.m. as the moisture and shear increase with time. Again, I've got a graphic that sort of depicts this coming up. The hail threat will be largely confined to the far northwest, even though it will be prevalent area-wide, particularly with any supercells that begin to develop after 7 o'clock. The greatest risk for hail will be with the individual cells and any supercells, but obviously along with the hail threat, we'll see a tornado and damaging wind threat as well. So it's just part of the whole package of severe weather for tonight. And that's because of the parameters that are in place for hail development, which are a little higher in the atmosphere. I'll just touch on this on the one slide. The rainfall outlook. The excessive rainfall outlook does have a slight risk that touches the far northwest, and that's in large part due to the line that will be a little slow to initially push to the southeast. And so we may see some heavy rain dump in that far northwest corner. One thing that they did update with the this day one update is they did push the marginal. It was not including the metro, but it does now include the metro, and that will be due to the heavy rainfall rates that occur, not so much the amounts. And if you look at the amounts on the far right, we're looking at anywhere from half the inch to maybe an inch, even down into the metro, but it's the rate at which that comes with some of these stronger storms that may cause us an isolated flooding issue. But generally speaking, half an inch to an inch and a half area wide. All right, so let's walk through this one by one, and I'm just showing you one particular model, and this is from maybe 2 or 3 hours ago, and I am noticing some changes in it, but this is the 8 o'clock plus or minus an hour. We really don't see anything in through about 8 o'clock tonight, maybe 7 or 8 o'clock. We're starting to see that line encroach across the northwest. There may be some isolated stuff develop ahead of it, but we'll begin to start watching this area. If I can get my pen here, I'll do the spotlight. This area in eastern Alabama, we'll start to watch this after 8 o'clock for development, along and ahead of the surge and instability and wind that's coming as a result of that increasing jet that I showed you on the slides before. So off of this. 9 p.m. Here is the, again, that line approaching the northwest corner. We maybe see some storms clip up across Dade and Walker and those areas. I would expect potentially a watch to be in place by around this time for sure. Obviously, all of the hazards, tornado and damaging wind and hail will be prevalent with any storms that you get in the northwest. The secondary area that we're going to be watching for development is this area in eastern Alabama that the models seem to be keying in on. It is largely along the leading edge of a big moisture and instability surge coming in from the Gulf. And the models have been hinting at this development showing up down there. All right, so 1 hour later, 10 p.m. This is just a 1 hour time difference. I want you to notice how much the models are trying to blow up storms in eastern Alabama. And then here's that line again, starting to congeal and move closer to northwest Georgia in that 10 p.m. hour. But what's more striking about this is the insinuation from the models that we could be looking at supercells along that leading edge, west central Georgia and eastern Alabama. I think one more slide. Yep. So I wanted to show that this is a 4 hour loop from 7 p.m. through 10 p.m. And it is of the model forecast of how unstable the atmosphere is, or the instability. Anything in really this teal light blue color excuse me, is decent instability, but it's this green area that starts surging in from the southwest. That is the atmospheric response to that strong jet that's developing. And we're seeing a strong surge in this instability even after sunset through tonight as a result of that. And these values are more than sufficient to support strong to severe storms. And so that's what gives us a little more confidence that we're likely going to see some severe weather tonight because of this strong surge in instability to the north. And it's through this 10 p.m., if I go back one slide, you can see those storms, this is the 10 p.m. hour, developing along and in that deeper instability that's surging to the north. And so that's what we'll be watching as this comes north tonight. Stepping forward 1 hour, here's 11 o'clock. You can see storms moving up into the metro and moving into east central parts of Georgia, with that squall line that's coming out of Tennessee beginning to encroach across the northwest. So we're looking at two distinct areas of severe weather in the 11 o'clock hour, maybe the discrete stuff out ahead of the line and the line itself. Both will have the potential for tornadoes, hail, and damaging winds. But more importantly, with the ever increasing wind speeds through the night, we are expecting that threat to actually increase with time, not decrease with time. Midnight, plus or minus an hour. Here's that line sinking further, a little bit further south into northwest Georgia. And you see, just a second. Sorry there, I had to cough. You see a lot more development of storms out ahead of the main line across the area. And that's what we're going to have to watch for during the overnight hours is more explosive development of these storms and more widespread development of the storms, particularly as they get close to the midnight hour. So metro, 11 p.m., 10, 11 p.m. thereafter. Northwest, you're a little bit earlier, but your focus will be mostly on that line of storms that's moving in. All right, stepping forward 1 more hour. That line starts to sink a little bit further south towards the metro. This is in about the 1 a.m. time period. And you see a lot more of the storms, again, dotting the map out ahead. Most likely in the form of supercells. There could be some congealing that's starting to go on where we see some bowing lines and segments, but this time period seems to be our most dangerous time period between 11 and 1 or 2 p.m. As storms develop out ahead in the stronger winds and the instability before the line can catch up. And so we'll be dealing with both modes, both severe along the line and potentially out ahead. And so that appears to be about the best window in that 1 a.m. time period. And a lot of the models we're looking at are all very similar in the look and feel. It's just a matter of how far north and east they actually get, or does it stay more confined south, along and south of I-20? That's still some of the uncertainty part of this. We step forward one more time, 2 a.m., start to see the line approaching the I-85 corridor with, again, storms forming out ahead. What we may be starting to see is a secondary line taking shape out ahead of the front itself. And so what we may see is a transfer, and the severe threat starts to take shape with a line that develops out ahead. We've seen this in the past before. But at this point, the severe threat is beginning to shift towards central and eastern parts of Georgia. And then I'm going to zoom out because we're starting the end of the model run that I had access to. This is at 4 a.m. We see that line extending from, say, just north of Augusta back to just north of Macon to maybe just getting through Columbus by about the 4 a.m. time frame. When we looked at instability and shear, it's definitely all there at around 4 a.m. So the tornado damaging wind threat and the hail threat will all still be possible within the line itself through 4 a.m. The good news is on the backside, we seem to be clearing things out behind the line once it finally moves through towards the middle of the night or so. And then by about 6 a.m., the line is starting to approach our far southeastern counties, not clearing Georgia yet, but we'll be getting into southeastern Georgia during the morning hours. But obviously the threat will still remain all through the 6 a.m. hour through our southeastern counties. So you guys from Dublin down to Cordele over to Vidalia, your window looks to be in that 3 to 6 a.m. time frame when the storms in the line get closer to you. So just wanted to show you the forecast model shear and instability with this. This is the whole loop from about 9 p.m. through 6 a.m. Anything in green that you see on the top right image is really unstable, over 1,000 plus or so with on the instability side, joules. On the bottom right is the lowest kilometer wind shear. And that's one of the key ingredients for tornadoes. Both remain in place through the night, which maintain the risk for severe weather. Through the night. And that's the main key I wanted to point out in this slide. So to wrap things up, on that last slide, the severe weather risk, obviously in place through this evening, through early Wednesday, damaging winds, tornadoes. With that hatched area and the strong shear in place, some tornadoes could be strong. We'll have to watch out for that. Large hail up to 2 inches and maybe a little on the high end, but I'm not going to rule it out, but definitely greater than 1 inch for sure. Obviously, with the hail, we typically experience a lot of excessive lightning, so we are expecting a lot of lightning with this. But the key things I want you to take away from this is that it is an overnight event with the parameters increasing with time overnight. And so with that, we're going to encourage folks to have multiple ways of receiving warnings. And more importantly, ensure that your WIA is enabled on your smartphones. And that's a setting that you can go into within the smartphone for the alerting. There is an ability to turn off weather. We want to make sure that people are aware that it is on for their phones for overnight, so that when we do, or if we do issue a tornado warning, that their phone is able to go off. We aren't expecting to do any more briefings as we're starting to set up for ops mode. So if you need to reach out to us, you can reach us in Slack, or you can call us. The easiest ways to get a hold of us. This slideshow will be pushed out here in the next 30 to 40 minutes, however long it takes to upload it. But by all means, reach out to us if you have any specific questions. And so with that, I will open it up and answer any questions that you may have.